The modern world is wealthier than at any other point in human history. In just the past decade, the global economy has generated more goods and services than in the first 5 millennia of human civilization combined. Alongside this explosion of productivity, new technologies have transformed our lives with greater health, knowledge, convenience, and entertainment. But despite this prosperity, the benefits have not been evenly shared. For centuries, most families assumed their children would live lives similar to their own. Progress was slow, and survival took priority over innovation. That changed with the Industrial Revolution. As technology advanced, people spent less time on survival and more on innovation, compounding wealth generation across generations. For much of the last 200 years, the expectation was simple. Children would be better off than their parents. This became part of the intergenerational bargain. Older generations could grow old with dignity, supported by steady economic growth, while younger generations could look forward to improved opportunities. Yet today, this bargain appears to be breaking. Younger generations are falling behind on milestones that their parents and grandparents achieved with relative ease, buying homes, starting families, saving for retirement, and even pursuing entrepreneurship. Gen Z, in particular, finds itself struggling financially despite living in the most technologically advanced era in history. This has sparked a question that animates heated debates. Are baby boomers, the post-World War II generation, responsible for this breakdown? And if so, are they the most selfish generation in history? The baby boomer exception. When it comes to dividing people into generations, the categories are often arbitrary. Millennials, for example, are said to be born between 1981 and 1996. But someone born in 1981 experienced a very different world than someone born in 1996. Job markets, global events, and childhood experiences all differed drastically. The one major exception is the baby boomers, whose generational identity is tied not to an arbitrary cutoff, but to the real demographic boom in births after World War II. In many Western nations, the boomers grew up in an era of Reconstruction, rapid economic growth, and social mobility. For them, the pathway to prosperity was relatively straightforward. Work hard, buy a home, save for retirement, and pass on wealth to their children. By comparison, today's youth feel locked out of the very opportunities boomers once took for granted. Are millennials and Gen Z simply young and broke? A decade ago, it was millennials who carried the reputation of being financially doomed. Articles warned of the lost generation, saddled with student debt and priced out of home ownership. But fast forward to today, and millennials are now on the cusp of becoming the wealthiest generation in history. How? 2 factors explain this shift. First, many millennials have advanced into higher-paying careers, building wealth through income. Second, and more significantly, they are beginning to inherit fortunes from their aging parents and grandparents. Intergenerational transfers of wealth are set to make millennials richer than any generation before them. This raises a key point. Younger generations may indeed accumulate wealth over time, but that doesn't necessarily mean they will live more prosperous lives. While a young adult in the 1970s could afford a home, car, and family on a modest income, many of today's youth must balance skyrocketing housing costs, student loans, and uncertain job markets. Boomers and the housing jackpot. Nowhere is the generational divide clearer than in housing. In much of the developed world, boomers were able to buy homes during a period when wages and property prices were more aligned. Today, in contrast, housing markets across major cities are overheated, pricing out younger buyers. But is this truly the fault of boomers? In some ways, yes. As the largest generation of their time, their collective political influence shaped policies that favored homeowners and asset owners. Tax breaks, zoning laws, and financial deregulation often serve to protect existing property owners while sidelining new entrants. At the same time, it's important to remember that not all boomers benefited equally. Just as today's millennials and Gen Z are deeply unequal, with wealth concentrated among a small elite, boomers also contained vast disparities. Roughly half of their collective wealth is controlled by a tiny fraction of ultra-rich individuals. Many boomers live in poverty or struggle financially, even while their peers enjoy comfortable retirements. The real culprit, then, may not be a generation itself, but the broader system of inequality that rewards asset accumulation over labor. Debt and the shifting landscape. Another crucial difference between boomers and their descendants is the role of debt. Boomers grew up in a time when borrowing was limited. Getting a loan required a personal relationship with a bank manager, detailed financial disclosures, and strong collateral. Consumer credit was rare, and digging into debt for non-essential spending was nearly impossible. Today, debt is ubiquitous. Student loans, credit cards, personal loans, and buy now, pay later schemes trap younger people in cycles of repayment that often outweigh their earnings. Unlike a mortgage, which builds equity, much of this debt is tied to consumption or education, leaving young borrowers with liabilities but no corresponding assets. In this environment, many start adulthood with negative net worth, something boomers rarely faced on the same scale. The global context. It's also worth zooming out to the global picture. Over the past 70 years, inequality has risen within wealthy nations but fallen across the world. Industrialization, globalization, and trade have lifted billions out of poverty in countries like China, India, and Vietnam. This progress, however, often came at the expense of middle-class workers in developed nations. Jobs were outsourced, industries automated, and unions weakened. While boomers, in aggregate, enjoyed decades of asset growth, younger generations in advanced economies now face stiffer competition, stagnant wages, and less secure employment. So, if boomers are seen as selfish, it is partly because their prosperity was underwritten by policies and global dynamics that left their descendants footing the bill. Are boomers truly the selfish generation? Labeling an entire generation as selfish oversimplifies a complex reality. Yes, boomers benefited from historically unique circumstances: post-war reconstruction, affordable education, cheap housing, and strong social programs. They also wielded political power that reinforced these advantages. But it would be unfair to say every boomer deliberately hoarded resources or knowingly disadvantaged future generations. Many simply participated in a system that rewarded their timing. Just as importantly, many boomers are themselves struggling today, facing inadequate pensions, medical costs, and rising living expenses. What younger generations are truly up against is not the selfishness of their parents or grandparents, but the structural forces of inequality that have compounded over decades. Conclusion: beyond generational blame. So, are boomers the most selfish generation in history? Not exactly. While it is true they reaped enormous benefits from unique historical conditions, it is misleading to frame the issue as one of generational morality. The struggles of Gen Z and millennials are real, but they stem less from boomer greed than from systemic inequality, debt-fueled economies, and political structures that privilege asset owners. Blaming boomers might be cathartic, but it distracts from the real problem: a global economic system that consistently enriches the few at the expense of the many. If there is selfishness at play, it is not the selfishness of a single generation, but of entrenched elites across time. Until inequality is addressed, every new generation, boomers, millennials, Gen Z, and those yet to come, will be shaped less by the year they were born and more by the wealth they inherit or lack thereof. If you found this video informative, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more content. Thank you.